He saved the alien who couldn't walk, but she betrayed him with death. The smoke rose slowly in the ruined valley, carrying the bitter smell of burning metal and broken stone. The battlefield was quiet now, silent except for the crackle of fire and the faint echo of falling debris. The human soldier, named Daniel, moved carefully through the wreckage. His uniform was torn, his arm bruised, but his eyes remained sharp. He had seen too many dead faces already, human and alien alike, yet he could not leave until he was sure there were no survivors. He stepped over a broken wing of a crashed ship, its surface glowing faintly with dying energy. Sparks hissed from torn wires, lighting the ground with small bursts of blue. Every sound made him tense. He knew the enemy sometimes left traps among the ruins, waiting for a careless rescuer, but still his boots pressed forward, driven by a strange pull. Somewhere in the silence he had heard a faint sound, almost like a cry. Daniel stopped, listening carefully. There it was again, a weak voice, more like a whisper carried by the wind. He turned toward the sound and pushed aside twisted beams of metal. His heart struck hard when his eyes found her. The alien lay half buried under the remains of her ship. Her skin was pale silver, reflecting the dim flames, and her long dark hair spread like ink across the ground. She had no armor, no weapon. Her legs were crushed beneath a heavy slab of steel. Her eyes opened slowly, and for a moment their glow held his in place. They were not human eyes, wide, filled with light, and yet heavy with suffering. She tried to move, but her body failed. A sound came from her throat, broken and soft. Daniel could not understand her words, but he felt their meaning. It was not anger or threat, it was pain, the voice of someone who wanted to live. He looked around quickly. No other soldiers were near. His orders had been clear: leave the enemy to die. But something inside him fought against those words. This alien did not look like a warrior. She looked weak, broken, and helpless. He told himself that maybe saving her could mean answers later, maybe a prisoner to question. But deep down he knew the truth. He could not walk away from suffering even if it wore the face of an enemy. Daniel knelt beside her, pushing aside the burning metal. The heat scorched his hands, but he did not stop. The slab pinning her legs was heavy, too heavy for him alone. He set his jaw, planted his boots firmly, and pushed with all his strength. The wreck groaned as it shifted, and with one final effort the slab rolled away. The alien gasped, her body jerking as her crushed legs were freed. He leaned close, trying to see the extent of her wounds. Her legs were twisted, useless. She could never walk again without help. Her breaths came quick and shallow, her chest rising and falling like a fragile flame about to go out. He reached into his pack, pulling out a small medical kit. As he began to treat her wounds, she stared at him, her glowing eyes unblinking. "Stay awake," he whispered. Even though she could not understand his language, "Do not close your eyes." Her hand trembled as it rose slightly, almost as if to touch his face. Then it fell back weakly onto the ground. Daniel bound her wounds as best as he could, wrapping cloth tight to stop the bleeding. Every time she winced, his chest tightened. He did not want to admit it, but he felt something strange. Something close to protectiveness. The fires around them burned lower, and the sky grew darker. The valley was turning into a graveyard, but inside this pocket of silence there was life struggling to remain. Daniel lifted her carefully into his arms. She was light, far lighter than a human of her size should be, as if her body was made of hollow bones. Her head rested weakly against his shoulder, and her breath touched his neck like a faint wind. He moved quickly, carrying her through the ruined battlefield. His every step was a gamble. If his commanders found out, they would call him a traitor. If enemy scouts appeared, they would shoot without mercy. But he kept moving. The weight in his arms was not heavy, but the choice he had made pressed down on him with more force than the steel he had lifted. As he reached the edge of the valley, he paused to catch his breath. He looked down at her again. Her eyes were half closed, glowing faintly. She looked at him with an expression he could not read. It was not gratitude, not yet. It was something more complex, something hidden deep behind her pain. Daniel knew nothing about her name, her people, her reasons for being here. All he knew was that he had saved her when he should have let her die. For now, that was enough. He turned toward the forest beyond the wreckage, holding her close as the smoke faded behind them. The silence grew deeper with every step, but inside him, the questions grew louder. Who was she? Why was she here? And most of all, had he just saved an innocent life, or invited death to walk beside him? The night air grew colder and the path ahead darker, but Daniel did not stop. Somewhere in his heart, he already knew this was only the beginning. The forest swallowed them in silence, only the distant hiss of flames marking the place they had left behind. Daniel carried the alien with careful steps, his boots sinking into the soft ground, his arms aching but steady. The moonlight fell through the tall trees, pale beams crossing over her silver skin. Her eyes flickered open and closed, half awake, as if fighting a battle inside her body. Every now and then, she muttered sounds that carried no meaning to him, yet he could sense their weight. They were not just words. They were fragments of fear, longing, or maybe secrets. He reached an abandoned outpost at the edge of the woods, half broken and forgotten after the war front had shifted. Its walls leaned with age, but it was shelter, and that was all he needed. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and laid her down on a makeshift cot. Her chest rose and fell with difficulty, each breath scraping like it might be her last. Daniel sat beside her, unsure of what he was doing. A soldier was not trained to save an enemy, but now every instinct inside him screamed that letting her die would mean losing something important, though he could not say why. He found water from a cracked barrel and pressed it gently against her lips. She drank weakly, her throat moving with effort. Her glowing eyes locked onto his face, and for a long moment they simply stared at one another. She looked at him not as a human or enemy, but as if searching for something deeper. The night stretched on. He cleaned her wounds again, his hands moving carefully as she twitched under the pressure. Every time her breath grew weaker, panic struck his chest. When her breath steadied, he let out relief he did not want to admit. Hours passed until her eyes opened fully, glowing brighter in the dim room. She whispered, her voice thin but carrying strange music in its sound. Daniel shook his head. "I do not understand you." She repeated the word, slower this time, her lips shaping it carefully as if teaching him. He listened, repeating the sound clumsily. She gave the faintest nod. He realized she was trying to build a bridge between them, a fragile rope made of words. Over the next days, the strange bond grew. She pointed at things in the room, naming them in her language, and he responded with human words. She would repeat them, shaping her lips with care. It was slow, broken, but something in her determination made him believe she wanted to understand him as much as he wanted to understand her. At night, she would watch him silently, her eyes glowing in the dark. Sometimes he felt as if she studied him the way one studies a weapon or a puzzle. Other times it felt like something softer, like curiosity. He could not tell which one was real, and that uncertainty kept his mind restless. Daniel asked himself again and again why he had saved her. She was still the enemy, still part of the force that had burned his world and left the battlefield littered with bodies. But when she struggled to sit up and almost fell, and he caught her, he felt her trembling body lean against him, weak and helpless. Something inside him told him she was more than just another soldier of her kind. One evening, rain pounded against the roof of the outpost. He lit a small fire to keep the room warm. The alien sat beside him now, her legs still bound but her body stronger than before. She reached toward the flame, her silver skin reflecting the light. She spoke softly, naming the fire in her tongue, then looked at him, waiting. "Fire," he said. She repeated it, the word strange in her voice. Then she touched her chest. "Lyra." He realized she had given him her name. The sound carried a quiet power, like something forbidden yet freely offered. He nodded slowly. "Daniel." Her lips formed the word, and for the first time her eyes softened. Yet behind these moments of fragile trust, shadows remained. Lyra's gaze sometimes grew distant, her face unreadable, as if she remembered something she could not share. Once he woke in the night to find her staring at him, her eyes unblinking, filled with something he could not name. It was not fear. It was not trust. It was something sharp, hidden, and cold. Still, the bond between them deepened. He carried her outside to see the stars when the rain cleared, her frail body resting in his arms as she gazed upward. She whispered words in her language, and though Daniel did not understand, he could feel their meaning. They were not words of war. They were words of longing, of someone far from home. For the first time since the war began, Daniel felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Hope that maybe an enemy could become something more. Hope that survival could bring unity. But deep inside, he also felt unease. There were cracks in her voice, in her eyes, in the way she sometimes turned away quickly when he asked about her people. She had secrets, and secrets were dangerous. He knew this truth, but he ignored it for the warmth of the fire, the fragile sound of her voice repeating his name, and the bond that was slowly binding them together. The forest outside whispered with the wind, but in the silence of that broken shelter, a fragile trust was growing, and Daniel could not see the shadow it carried toward him. The mornings in the forest were heavy with mist, each droplet clinging to the leaves like silent watchers. Daniel rose early, always alert, always cautious, though now he found his attention drawn less to the dangers outside and more to the fragile figure inside the outpost. Lyra's wounds were healing slowly, but her legs remained useless. He had carried her so many times that it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a duty, and in that duty, he had started to feel something he did not want to admit. One morning, as the sun filtered pale gold through the cracks in the wall, Lyra spoke with a voice stronger than before. Her words were broken, stitched together from the human tongue she was slowly learning. "You help me. You risk much." Her glowing eyes studied him, sharper now, as if testing what kind of man he truly was. Daniel only shrugged. It was the right thing. Her lips curled faintly, but her gaze did not soften. She leaned forward, placing her trembling hand on his arm. Her touch was cold, like water drawn from a deep well. "I give something." "You need," he frowned, unsure. "What do you mean?" Lyra spoke in her language then, a rush of sound that carried a strange weight. Her hand pressed firmer against his arm, and for a brief moment a sharp heat spread under his skin. Daniel pulled back instinctively, but the warmth lingered, running through his veins like fire mixed with ice. His breath caught in his chest. "What did you do?" His voice sharpened, though fear was mixed with awe. Lyra leaned back, her face pale but her eyes steady. "Gift," she whispered. "My kind. Heal, change, make strong." She tapped his chest weakly. "You need to live." He clenched his fists, feeling the strange energy humming inside him. It was faint at first, but real. His bruised arm from the battlefield no longer throbbed. His cuts were sealed. Even his fatigue seemed to fade like a shadow under sunlight. Daniel stared at her, torn between gratitude and suspicion. "Why give this to me?" She tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Because you choose me. Save me, now. I choose you." The words struck deep, but they carried an edge he could not ignore. A gift was never just a gift. There was always a cost. He remembered her earlier words. Every gift has a cost. That night, Daniel tested his strength in the clearing. He struck at the trunk of a fallen tree, and the wood cracked under his blow. His body felt alive in a way it never had before. Faster, sharper, stronger, like every muscle had been remade. For a moment he felt invincible. But when he returned to the outpost, he found Lyra watching him closely, her glowing eyes reflecting the firelight. "You feel it," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Yes," he admitted, though unease tugged at him. "But what is the cost?" Lyra did not answer. Instead, she closed her eyes, her body sinking into exhaustion. He wanted to push her for the truth, but something in the way her breathing trembled stopped him. He sat beside her quietly, though his thoughts raced. Days passed, and the change inside him grew. He could hunt more easily, carrying game back without fatigue. He could climb and move through the forest with unnatural speed. Even the constant weight of war inside him seemed lighter, but every time his gaze fell on Lyra, he wondered if he had taken something far more dangerous into himself. One evening, as he returned with firewood, he found her holding the broken communicator he had hidden. Somehow she had discovered it. The small device still glowed faintly, though its signal was weak. Daniel froze in the doorway, his chest tightening. "Lyra," he said slowly, "what are you doing with that?" She looked up at him, her silver skin glowing softly in the dim light. Her expression was calm, but her voice carried something sharp. "I need to call. My people, they think me dead. They come." Daniel stepped forward, his voice low. "If you call them, they will not just come for you. They will come for all of us. For me." Her eyes did not waver. "I owe them. You saved me, but I belong there." The silence between them grew thick, heavier than any words. Daniel felt the strength in his body pulse again, a reminder of her gift. But was it truly a gift or a leash tied around his throat? That night Daniel could not sleep. He kept watch, staring into the dark where Lyra rested. Her face looked peaceful, but her hand remained near the communicator. He knew he should take it, destroy it, end the danger before it began. Yet when he moved closer, something stopped him. The bond they had built, the fragile bridge of trust, it held him back like chains. He whispered to himself, a voice no one else would hear. Did I save her life? Or give her the chance to take mine? The fire burned low, shadows creeping along the walls. Lyra's breathing was steady, her eyes closed, but in the stillness, Daniel felt the truth pressing in on him. The gift inside him was not only strength, it was a seed he did not plant, but one that might one day grow into betrayal. The storm came without warning. Dark clouds spread across the sky like ink spilled on glass, and the forest bent under the weight of roaring winds. Daniel pulled the broken shutters closed, trying to shield the old outpost from the rain. Lightning lit the sky in brief flashes, and thunder shook the wooden walls. Inside, the fire was weak, the air damp and cold. Lyra sat by the flames, her glowing eyes reflecting each flash of light. For days, Daniel had felt the tension tightening around them. Ever since he saw the communicator in her hands, a doubt had rooted itself deep inside him. He tried to trust her, tried to believe the bond they had built was real. But her silences, her distant stares, and the way she whispered in her own tongue when she thought he could not hear, all of it whispered betrayal. That night, as the storm raged, he could no longer ignore it. Lyra, he said, his voice low but firm, you must tell me the truth. She looked up at him slowly, her silver skin glowing faint in the firelight. Her expression was calm, almost too calm. Truth? Daniel stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. What are you planning? That device, were you calling for rescue or were you calling for soldiers? Did you tell them where we are? The silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackle of the fire and the rumble of the storm outside. Lyra did not answer at first. Instead, she studied him, her gaze deep and unreadable. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but sharp enough to cut. I call them. I must, my people. They search for me. They need me. Daniel's jaw tightened. And what about me? If they find us, do you think they will let me live? Her eyes flickered, the faintest sign of conflict. You saved me. You different, maybe. They listen. He shook his head bitterly. They will not listen. They will see me as the enemy, the same way you once did. Tell me, Lyra, when they come, will you protect me? Or will you stand with them? Lyra lowered her eyes, and for the first time since he had known her, she looked fragile again, uncertain. Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence was heavier than any answer. Daniel turned away, pacing across the small room. His strength pulsed inside him, the gift she had given, now a constant reminder of the tie between them. But what if it was not a gift at all? What if it was a chain? He felt it burning in his veins, and he wondered if one day it would consume him from within. The storm outside grew louder, and with it came a strange unease, as if the world itself was waiting for something. He glanced back at Lyra, and for a moment their eyes met again. In the firelight, her gaze was no longer soft. It was sharp, almost cold, like a blade hidden behind silk. Why do you look at me like that? He asked, his voice rough. Lyra tilted her head. Because you trust too much. Humans always trust. The word struck him harder than thunder. He stepped closer, anger flaring in his chest. If you think I am a fool, then tell me, why did you let me save you? Why give me this strength if you mean to betray me? Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, not quite sorrow. Because even betrayal needs trust first. The fire cracked loudly, throwing sparks into the air. Daniel froze, her words sinking deep into him like poison. For the first time, he saw not just the wounded figure he had carried from the wreckage, but the possibility of something darker hidden inside her. He felt his breath quicken, the storm pounding outside matching the storm inside him. He had risked everything to keep her alive, believing in something beyond war, believing that even enemies could share trust. But now the truth pressed in on him. He did not know her. He had never known her. Lyra looked away, her voice dropping to a whisper. I did not want this war, but we cannot stop it. Not with hope. Not with trust. Death always wins. People ever arrived. But when he looked at her, weak and pale in the flickering light, he could not move. His heart fought his mind, and the war inside him became louder than the one outside. Hours passed as the storm raged. Lyra finally drifted into uneasy sleep, her breathing shallow, her face unreadable even in rest. Daniel sat awake watching her, every thought colliding with another. Was she telling the truth, or was this all another layer of deception? Could he still believe in the bond they had shared? Or was it only a mask she wore until the moment came? The night stretched long and merciless, and by the time dawn touched the horizon, Daniel realized he had crossed a line. He could no longer see her as simply a life he had saved. She was a riddle, a danger, and perhaps his death waiting quietly beside him. The storm had passed, but inside the broken outpost, the silence that followed felt even heavier than the thunder. The dawn broke gray and lifeless, a weak light seeping through the gaps in the wooden walls. Daniel sat against the doorframe of the outpost, his eyes heavy with the weight of a sleepless night. The storm had passed, but it left behind an uneasy silence, the kind that seemed to wait for something dreadful. His body felt strong, stronger than it had ever been, but his mind was torn apart by doubt. Lyra stirred on the cot, her eyes glowing faintly as they opened. She watched him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. No sleep," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange gentleness that almost felt real. Almost. Daniel looked at her, his jaw tight. "I could not." Her lips curved faintly, but her gaze shifted to the broken communicator on the floor. It lay in pieces now, shattered by Daniel's hand before dawn. When he had destroyed it, she had not fought him. She had only watched, silent, as though she already knew what he would do. That silence haunted him more than if she had screamed. Hours passed slowly. They ate little, spoke less. Every glance between them was heavy with questions neither dared to voice. But as the day grew old, the forest outside shifted. Birds vanished. The wind carried a sound that was not natural. A hum, faint at first, then growing louder. Daniel stepped outside, his heart racing. Above the treetops, a shadow moved, sharp, metallic, alive with light. An alien craft circling like a predator over prey. His blood ran cold. Somehow, despite the broken communicator, they had found her, and now they had found him. He rushed back inside. Lyra was already sitting up, her glowing eyes brighter than he had ever seen them. She looked at him with something that might have been sorrow or triumph. "They come," she whispered. Daniel grabbed his weapon, his hands steady though his chest burned with betrayal. "And what will you do when they arrive, Lyra? Stand with me or stand with them?" Her silence was the only answer he needed. The ground shook as the craft descended beyond the trees. The air hummed with power, the sound of engines and voices not human. Daniel knew he had only moments. He turned to her one last time, desperate for something true. "Tell me I was not wrong to save you. Tell me this was not all for nothing." Lyra's gaze did not waver. She reached out, her cold hand brushing his cheek with a tenderness that cut deeper than any blade. Her voice was soft, but her words were final. "Daniel, you gave me life, but life for me means death for you." Before he could react, her other hand moved. Faster than he thought her broken body could, she struck. The gift she had placed in him burned violently, twisting his strength against him. His chest seized, fire ripping through his veins as if every bone and muscle betrayed him from within. He dropped to his knees, his weapon clattering to the floor. His vision blurred, the world tilting in waves of agony. He looked up at her, struggling for breath, his voice broken. "Why?" Lyra rose slowly, her legs once useless now moving with unnatural grace. The glow in her eyes was no longer faint, it blazed like cold fire. "Because I was never yours to save. I was theirs. I am the signal, the proof that humans can be broken by mercy." Daniel gasped, his body racked with pain as his own strength turned against him. He had thought the gift was healing, a chance at survival. Instead, it was a seed of death planted in his blood. The betrayal was not just in her words, but in his very body, twisted into a weapon he could not control. The door burst open and alien soldiers entered, their forms sharp and strange, their weapons gleaming. They looked at Lyra and then at Daniel collapsing on the floor. One spoke in their tongue, its voice cold and approving. Lyra stood tall now, no longer the helpless figure he had carried from the wreckage. She looked down at Daniel, and for a heartbeat, something flickered in her gaze, not triumph, not hatred, but something softer, like regret buried under duty. "You should not have trusted me," she whispered. Daniel's vision darkened, his last breath shallow and weak. The forest outside trembled with the sound of alien victory, but inside the outpost the silence between them carried a weight far greater than war. He had saved her when he should have left her to die. And in the end she had repaid him not with gratitude but with death. The fire in the room guttered out, leaving only shadows.